Okay. Can you hear me? Please, can you hear me? Hare Krishna. I think my mic is somehow unstable today. Okay, I hope you can hear me. Okay. So let's share the screen. We'll get started. Today, chapter 6. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskrityam
Narayanam Namaskrityam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naranchaiva Narottanam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Tato Jayatmadhiraye
Prachodayatmadhirahe
Nashtaprayeshe Abhadresu
Nashkayes Abhadresu
Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavatam Tama Sloke
Bhagavatam Uttama Sloke
Bhaktirabhavati Naistiki.
Bhaktir Bhakti Naishtati.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Hare Prabhu
Shri Advaita
Nityananda
Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. We are starting today chapter 6 called Dhyana Yoga from Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, um, let's recap from chapter 5. Uh, so, in chapter 5, here is the what we studied. So, in chapter 5, you remember Krishna ended the chapter describing Dhyana Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga leading to liberation. He said that you should set your all the external senses from the object. Keep your eyes closed and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breath within the nostril, controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence. The transcendentalist aim, what is the purpose? To become free from fear, desire, and anger. And then you can focus and do meditation. This is what Krishna gave a glimpse of the Dhyana Yoga or called Ashtanga Yoga. Okay. So now in this chapter, Dhyana Yoga called Dhyana Yoga, we are dividing this chapter has 47 slokas, and we have for the purpose of convenience we have divided this into 6 sections. The first section will be talking from sloka number 1 to 4, advancing in yoga through detached work. The second section is called the Yoga Runa stage, giving up work, from sloka 5 to 9. And third section is called further stage in the practice of yoga, which is from 10 to 32. So around 22 sloka, Krishna will explain what are the different stages in practice of Dhyana Yoga. And from 33 to 36 is Krishna will explain what is the necessity of controlling the turbulent mind, because the whole purpose of this Dhyana Yoga to control the mind. And then fifth one that we'll be talking about destination of unsuccessful yogi. So if somebody becomes unsuccessful in this dhyana yoga, what will happen? 37 to 45. And then Krishna, after describing here all the yogas, this was the last one, he will explain who is the topmost yogi, because you remember, yoga is the ladder, it's a stage. So what is the topmost? You remember the example of elevator going to different floors. So then question comes, which one is the top floor and which is more important, right? So we'll discuss and understand in this chapter. So very important chapter. So in the beginning, Krishna will start explaining. I'm giving you a summary and then we'll go into detail and read the book directly, okay? So in sloka 1 and 2 of this chapter, Krishna is going to explain one who is unattached to the fruits of work and who works as he is obliged, a matter of duty, is more important or more better than someone who doesn't do anything. So Bhagavad Gita is talking yoga means to act. Yoga doesn't means you meditate and sleep. So that's Krishna is starting here. But what you have to do, you have to renounce all kind of sense gratificatory activities, and one should know that what is your position as a living entity and act accordingly. So in the first two sloka, Krishna will explain that one. So, what is this dhyana yoga? This dhyana yoga, which this chapter talk about, this dhyana yoga has 8 stages. Okay, so this is listed here. The first 5 stages is called yoga ruksaku stage, initial stage, and these are the prescribed essentials duties. So, what are these first 5? Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara. These are the 5 initial stages in the dhyana yoga or ashtanga yoga. So yama means external disciplines. Like some things you have to not do it. You have to control your senses from external things, right? Objects. That's called yamas. Niyamas means internal discipline. You have to control how internally your mind, right? And third is asana, is called posture, how you sit for meditation. That is called asana. There is a specific recommendation how you sit for dhyana yoga, meditation. And pranayam means breathe control. Like then once you, so first you control your senses from external objects, then you also control your mind from internal objects. And then third, you should know how to sit properly. And then fourth is breathe control. You should be able to control your breathe inward and outward. Then fifth is you have to withdraw your senses from the sense object. So that's how you do through breathe control. And then once you are able to withdraw your senses, that's the part of the first 5 is here. Then next 3, which is total 8, is called yoga rudha stage, advanced stage, where you do dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So in the first 5, you have to do your prescribed duties if you are practicing on these stage of meditation or Ashtanga yoga. But when you go to the second part of this Ashtanga yoga, which is dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, you may not have to act externally because you are becoming concentrated. So first is dharana, you concentrate. Then dhyana, you do meditative absorption. And then through that, you get into union or integration called samadhi. So then your internal and external activities, there is no difference, called samadhi. So these are the different 8 stages of Ashtanga yoga. That's why it's called Ashtanga. It means 8 stages. Okay. So Krishna will explain from 3rd to 4. And what is yama niyama? Yamas don'ts and niyamas that do's. So there are certain things you don't have to do in Ashtanga yoga or any kind of yoga, and niyama means you have to do. What are the things you don't have to do? It called ahimsa. First, no meat eating, no killing in any kind of animals or plants. Okay. Satya, truthfulness. You have to be honest. That's called truthfulness, right? You don't have to lie. So that's yama. Asatya, no stealing. Don't steal. Don't beg, borrow, steal. No. And then brahmacharya, no sex before marriage or sex with only in marriage relation, called brahmacharya. Apig, aparigraha, you don't have to think of accumulating too much. So these are the five yamas, don'ts. Ahimsa, satya, asatya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. And niyamas, the do's are socha, cleanliness. You have to be clean, internally and externally. Santosa, you have to have satisfaction, whatever comes by its own accord, without excessive endeavor. So you become satisfied. Tapa, you have to do austerity. You have to give up voluntarily things which you don't want to give up. That's called tapasya. And Shwayadhyay, you have to study the scripture. Nobody does, right? And Ishvara Paridhana, surrendering to Krishna. You have to surrender to God. So these are do's in Astanga Yoga. And then Krishna will go on explain Yoga Rudha stays, giving up work 5 to 9. That's the sloka number. And so that's a kind of a background. With that, I'm gonna start with sloka number 1 of this chapter. You can see my screen. Can you see my screen? You can confirm.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. All right. So let's get started. Bhagavad Gita 6.1. Sri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagwan Vacha
Anasrita Karma
Anasrita Karma
Karyam Kam Karma Karoti Ya
Karyam Karma Karoti Ya
Sa Sannyasi Sa Yogi Cha
Sa Sannyasi Cha Yogi Cha
Na Niragnir Cha Chakriya.
Narayana Chatkriya.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Shri Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obliged is in the renounced order of life. He is the true mystic, not he who light no fire and perform no duty. Purport. In this chapter, the Lord explains that the process of eightfold yoga system is to control the mind and the senses. However, this is very difficult for people in general, especially in the age of Kali. Although the eightfold yoga system is recommended in this chapter, the Lord emphasized the process of karma yoga or acting in Krishna consciousness is better. Everyone acts in this world to maintain his family and their paraphernalia, but no one is working without some self interest, some personal gratification, be it concentrated or extended. The criterion for perfection is to act in Krishna consciousness. I think I lost. Can you hear me? Hare Krishna.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Prabhuji.
Okay. Everyone is acts in this world to maintain his family and their paraphernalia, but no one is working without self-interest, some personal gratification, be it concentrated or extended. The criterion of perfection is to act in Krishna consciousness and not with a view to enjoy the fruit of work. To act in Krishna consciousness is duty of every living entity because all are constitutionally part and parcel of the Supreme. The part of the body work for the satisfaction of the whole body. The limbs of the body do not act for self-satisfaction, but for satisfaction of the complete whole. Similarly, the living entity who acts for satisfaction of the supreme whole and not for personal satisfaction is the perfect sannyasi, the perfect yogi. The sannyasis sometimes artificially think that they have become liberated from the material duties and therefore they cease to perform Agnihotra Yagna, fire sacrifices. But actually, they are self interested because their goal is to become one with the impersonal Brahman. Such a desire is greater than any material desire, but it is not without self interest. Similarly, the mystic yogi who practices yoga with half open eyes, seals all material activities, desires some satisfaction for his personal self. But a person acting in Krishna consciousness works for the satisfaction of the whole. Just a minute, huh? Can you hear me? Okay. Without self-interest, a Krishna-conscious person has no desire for satisfaction. His criterion of success is satisfaction of Krishna, and thus he is perfect mystic or perfect yogi. Lord Chaitanya is a perfectional symbol of renunciation, praised in this way. Na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam hua jagadi sakamaye mama janmani janmanishware bhavatat bhakti raheti tvai. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I enjoy beautiful women, nor I want any number of followers. What I want only is the causeless mercy of your devotional service in my life, birth after birth. Okay, so that's what Prabhupada is summarizing. What we had a presentation, we saw that Krishna will tell you all the stages, and at the end he will tell you what is the topmost. And Prabhupada is disclosing here that it's a Krishna consciousness. So we'll understand how. Okay, let's go sloka 2. Okay, who wants to read this one sloka?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mata.
I'll read.
Yes.
Yam sannyasam iti pahur yogam tam vidhi pandava nahay asanasta samkalpo yogi bhavati kaskana. What what is called renunciation you should know to be the same as yoga, or linked oneself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu, for one who never becomes a yogi unless he renounces the desire for the sense gratification. Purport. Real sannyasa, yoga, or bhakti means that one should know his constitutional position as a living entity and act accordingly. The living entity has no separate independent identity. He is marginal. He is the marginal energy of the Supreme. When he is entrapped by the material energy, he is conditioned, and when he is Krishna conscious or aware of spiritual energy, then he is in his real natural state of life. Therefore, when one is in complete knowledge, one ceases all material sense gratification or renunciation all kind of the self gratification activities. This is practiced by the yogis who restrain the senses from the material attachment. But a person is Krishna conscious, in Krishna conscious, has no opportunity to engage his senses in anything which is not for the purpose of Krishna. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is simultaneously a sannyasi or a yogi. The purpose of the knowledge and of restricting the senses as prescribed in the jnana of yoga process is automatically served in Krishna consciousness. If one is unable to give up the activities for his self nature, then jhana or yoga are, are of no avail. The real aim is for living entity to give up all selfish satisfaction and to be prepared to satisfy the supreme. A Krishna conscious person has no desire for any kind of self enjoyment. He is always engaged for enjoyment of the supreme. One who has no information of the supreme must therefore be engaged in self satisfaction, because no one can stand on the platform of inactivity. All purposes are perfectly served by the practice of Krishna consciousness. Can't hear you. Hare Krishna.
Okay, sorry, I muted. I was saying you just read that Krishna is explaining um, that what is called renunciation you should know same as yoga or linking oneself with Supreme. So what Krishna is explaining, yoga means linking oneself with Supreme. But the modern days yoga, that's different. It's not the real yoga. That's what you will understand. So far in our life, what we have been taught to be yoga is not yoga. It is a part of one of the part of the yoga, like breathing, pranayam, or means or sitting posture. Different ways of sitting and folding the body is like 1% or few percent you can say of the total yoga system. But there is no goal in breathing and sitting posture. What is the goal? Is health, like self interest. But the yoga is to connect to the Supreme. That's what Krishna is telling in translation if you read. Linking oneself with the Supreme, right? Ya sanyasimitim prahum yogar tata vidhi pandava na he asanyasatya sankalpo yogi bhavat kaschana. And Krishna then again explaining here, one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for self gratification. So this is another criteria. The first, you should know that you are connecting with Supreme, and second, one should give up desire for sense gratification. But both is not existing in modern day yoga because they want to enjoy the body. That's why they are doing yoga. They want to enjoy the body to maximum. And the body should work nicely, and they can have more enjoyment. And then again, come back and do yoga. Like they eat meat, drink, and everything. Then you yoga. But there is no don'ts. Everything you can do, but keep on doing yoga, pranayam, and physical exercise. But it's misleading, and that's why there is no satisfaction. There is no peace. Even if you do yoga, how long it can last, right? Artificial way, because the mind is not controlled. All right. So we'll go to the next one, third. Who wants to read this one? Fourth, third.
Hare
It should
Krishna.
be third, right? Yeah, third. Who wants to read?
Harur Shoro
Yes.
Manir Yogam Karma Karanam Yuskete Yogarudyasya Tasyavaiva Samah Karanam Akyute. For for one who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means, and for one who is already evaluated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means, purpose. The process of linking oneself with the Supreme is called yoga. It, it may be compared to the ladder for attaining the topmost spiritual realization. This ladder begins from the lowest material condition of the living entity and rises up to perfect self realization in pure spiritual life. According to various elevations, different parts of the ladder are known by different names. But all in all, the complete ladder is called yoga and may be divided into three parts, namely Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. The beginning of the ladder is called Yoga Rukshu stage, and the uh, highest rung is called Yoga Rudha. Concern concerning the eightfold yoga system attempts in the beginning to enter into meditation through regulative principles of life and practice of different sitting postures, which are more or less body exercises, are considered fruitive material activities. All such activities lead to achieving the perfect mental equilibrium to control the senses. When one is accomplished in the practice of meditation, the causes all distinguished material activities. A Krishna consciousness person, however, is situated from the beginning on platform of meditation because he always thinks of Krishna and being constantly engaged in the service of Krishna. He is the considered to be have seized all material activities. Hare Krishna.
I already explained to you the eight stages, and Krishna said the first five is you have to work, and the last three you don't have to work. Okay, so that's what Prabhupada explained. Let's read more. Text 4. Who wants to read this one? 6.4.
Kamini Mataji wants to read.
And mute, I think. Mataji, Kamini Mataji.
Prabhuji,
You want to
just
read?
give me a minute, Prabhuji. 6.4. I'll open the book. I just got into the box.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yadda hinendriyandresu na karmas anusajjate sarva sarikalpa sannyasi yoga dusaktudo tadotyate. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when having renounced all material desires. He neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. Purport. When a person is fully engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is pleased in himself and thus he is no longer engaged in sense gratification or in fruitive activities. Otherwise, one must engage in sense gratification since one cannot live without engagement. Without Krishna consciousness, one must be always seeking self-centered or extended selfish activities. But a Krishna conscious person can do everything for the satisfaction of Krishna and thereby be perfectly detached from sense gratification. One who has no such realization must mechanically try to escape material desires before being elevated to the top rung of the yoga ladder.
Okay, you can read more. Yeah, you can read more. Mataji. 5th.
Yeah. Uddare atmana manam nathamanam avasatyate ditya atma vai hai atmano bandhur atma vaivaripur atmaha. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditional soul and his enemy as well. The word Atma denoted by body, mind, and soul, depending upon different circumstances. In the yoga system, the mind and the conditioned soul are especially important. Since the mind is the central point of yoga practice, Atma refers here to the mind. The purpose of the yoga system is to control the mind and to draw it away from attachment to sense objects. It is stressed herein that the mind must be so trained that it can deliver the conditioned soul from the mire of nations. In material existence, one is subjected to the influence of the mind and the sense. In fact, the pure soul is entangled in the material world because the mind is involved with the false ego, which desires to lord it over material nature. Therefore, the mind should be trained so that it will not be attracted by glitter of material nature. And in this way, the conditioned soul may be saved. One should not degrade oneself by attraction to sense objects. The more one is attracted by sense objects, the more one becomes entangled in material existence. The best way to disentangle oneself is to always engage the mind in Krishna consciousness. The word "hai" is used to emphasizing this point. That is, one must do this. It is also said, "Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshaha bandhya visayansago mukyaya nirvaisyam maha." For man, mind is the cause of bondage and mind is the cause of liberation. Mind observed in sense objects in the cause of bondage, the mind detached from the sense objects in the cause of liberation. Amrita Bindu Upanishad. Therefore, the mind, which is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, is the cause of supreme liberation. Shall I go for another one, Prabhuji?
Yes.
Bandhuram atmanasastasya yemanatmaivatmanam jita atmanasam tu sarve satruve varte tattvamaiva satruvat. For him who has conquered the mind is the best friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Perfect. The purpose of practicing eightfold yoga is to control the mind in order to make it a friend in discharging in the human mission. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga is simply a waste of time. One who cannot control his mind lives always with the greatest enemy, and thus his life and his mission are spoiled. The constitutional position of the living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. As long as one's mind remains an unconquered enemy, one has to serve the dictations of lust, anger, avarice, illusion, etc. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the dictation of the personality of Godhead, who is situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. Real yoga practice entails meeting the Paramatma within the heart and then following his dictation. For one who takes to Krishna consciousness directly, perfect surrender to the dictation of the Lord follows automatically.
Hare
Next
Krishna.
one,
Thank you,
okay.
Mataji. Thank you. Yeah, someone else can read it because this is all discussion on the mind, and then we'll discuss at the end. So, uh, who wants to read the next one?
If
Anybody?
nobody is reading, I can read.
Okay, you can read, Mataji. Nobody's saying.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
जिता मनः प्रसन्तास्य परमात्मा समाहिताः शीतोष्णा सुख दुःखेषु तत मनपम मनपमनायोः. For one who has conquered the mind, the Supreme Soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and desire, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Purport. Actually, every living entity is entitled to abide by the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. When the mind is misled by the external illusionary energy, one becomes entangled in the material activities. Therefore, as soon as one's mind is controlled through one of the yoga system, one should be considered to have already reached the destination. One has to abide the supreme by the supreme dictation. When one's mind is fixed on the superior nature, he has no alternative but to follow the dictation of the supreme. Mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. The effect of controlling the mind is that one automatically follows the dictation of Paramatma and or Supersoul. Because this transcendental position is at once achieved by one who is Krishna conscious. The devotee of the Lord is unaffected by the dualities of the material existence, namely distress and happiness, cold and heat, etc. This state is practical samadhi. or absorption of in the Supreme. I'll read further.
Yes. Yes, Mataji.
ज्ञान विज्ञान त्रिप त्रिताप्तमा कुतः सोतो विजितेन्द्रियाः युक्ता इति उच्यते योगी समालोस्त्रमा कंचन चनः. A person who is said to be established in self-realization is called yogi or a mystic. When he is fully satisfied by the virtue of acquired knowledge and realization, such a person is situated in transcendence and is in self-control. He sees everything, whether it to be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. Purport: book knowledge without realization of the supreme truth is unless this is stated as follows. अतः श्रीकृष्ण नमदि न भवेद ग्रहत याम इंद्रियान सर्वोन्मुखी ही जीवादु स्वयं एव पुरधे अधे. No one can understand the transcendental meaning of the name, form, quality, or pastimes of Sri Krishna, through his materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental services of the Lord are the transcendental name, form, quality, pastimes of Lord revealed to him. Bhakti Rahasam Sindhu. This Bhagavad Gita is the science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious simply by mundane scholarship. One must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who is in pure Krishna consciousness. A Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna because he is satisfied with pure devotional service. By realized knowledge, one becomes perfect. By transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions. But by mere academic knowledge, one can easily diluted and confused by apartment contradictions. It is realized soul who is actually self controlled because he is surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, which may be as good as gold to others, are of no greater value than the pebbles or stones.
You
Shall I
can
read
read this
further?
also. Yeah.
Suhinya, suhi, suhinminanyung yuradasi nama dhyasta devashta bandhushu साधुव्य अपि च पपिसे पपिसे समा बुधिर् विशिष्यते. Person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate beneficiaries, benefactors, the neutral, meditator, the envious, friends and enemies, the pious and the sinner, all with an equal mind.
Okay.
Further,
Let's check if somebody else wants to read. This is last sloka. And then
I'll
we'll have
read Prabhuji.
Okay.
योगी यञ्चिता सततम् आत्मानं रहासि स्थितः एकाकी यत सिद्धात्मा मनसे अपरिग्रहः. A transcendental A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a scheduled palace and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of progressiveness. Purport. Krishna is realized in different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of the Godhead. Krishna consciousness means concisely to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. But those who are attached to the impersonal Brahman or the localized super souls are also partially Krishna consciousness, because the impersonal Brahman is the spiritual ray of Krishna and the super soul is all pervading partial expansion of Krishna. Thus, the impersonalist and the meditator are also indirectly Krishna conscious. A directly Krishna conscious person is the topmost transcendentalist because such a devotee knows what is meant by Brahman and Paramatma. His knowledge of the absolute truth is perfect, whereas the impersonalist and the meditative yogi are imperfectly Krishna conscious. Nevertheless, all of those are instructed here with to be constantly engaged in their particular pursuits so that they may come to the highest perfection sooner or later. The first business of the transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Krishna. The first business of a transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Krishna, sir. One should always think of Krishna and not forget him even for a moment. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is called samadhi or trance. In order to concentrate the mind, one should always remain in seclusion and avoid disturbance by external objects. He should be very careful to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions that affect his realization. And in perfect determination, he should not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangled him by feelings of possessiveness. All those perfections and precautions are perfectly executed when one is directly in Krishna consciousness, because direct Krishna consciousness means self abnegation, wherein there is very little chance for material possessiveness. Srila Rupa Goswami characterized Krishna consciousness in this way. Anasaktasya visayan यथार्थम उपनिषज्जतः निर्बन्ध कृष्णा समाबन्धे युक्तां वैराग्यम् उच्यते प्रपाणिकाताय बुद्ध हरिसमाधि वसन्तः मुमुक्षुभिः मुमुक्षुभिः परित्यागो वैराग्यं फाल्गुकथायते. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowledge of its relationship to Krishna is not as complete in his renunciation. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 255 to 256. A Krishna consciousness person well knows that everything belongs to Krishna and thus he always free from feelings of personal possession. As such, he has no hankering for anything on his own personal account. He knows how to accept things in favor of Krishna consciousness and how to reject things unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. He is always aloof from material things because he is always transcendental and he is always alone, having nothing to do with persons not in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is the perfect yogi. Hare Krishna, Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Okay. So, lot of things in this sloka. Let me share my screen or whiteboard. Can you use whiteboard? Nice. Okay. Okay. So, just close.
Prabhuji, you are not audible.
You're muted.
Can you hear me now? Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Yes,
Yes,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Okay. So, as you just read, so suppose this is the person, a dummy, um, and this person, what are the things in it? You know, we have five senses, right? These are the, eyes, ear, nose, all these senses. And then we have a mind, intelligence, and ego. The five senses are connected to the mind. All these five senses feed into your mind. And mind is pervading throughout your body, right? It's like a spirit. Now in your heart, this heart, there is a soul, right? And there is a super soul. Two things, right? So this body is like a machine. It's a perfect machine which is operated by by the agency of the mind through the senses. That's how it acts. When the senses stop working, you say this person is dead, right? So this soul is sitting with super soul in the heart, and they never talk to each other in ordinary condition. There is no communication. Why? Because here is the soul, soul, and here is big super soul. But there is in between soul and super soul, there is layers of a huge big layer of mind. It's like you can call mind, or yeah, it's mind. And now this mind is like a barrier, because this mind is supposed to connect you from between, the soul should connect to the super soul via mind. This is the regular natural position. But this mind is distributed to five different senses of the world, through connected to this world. So this machine is part of, mind is part of, connected to the world through these senses, and this mind becomes more engaged with these five different senses. So the purpose of yoga, what is the purpose of yoga? Uh, the purpose of yoga, so yoga means what? Yoga, as you just study, connect to Supreme. Okay. Connect to who connects? Connect means connect soul, your soul to Supreme, who? Super soul in your body. This process is called yoga. Okay. Now, how you do that? First of all, you have to be able to control the mind. How you control the mind? Because mind is getting agitated by the senses, then you have to control the senses. Then you can control the mind. Without controlling the senses, you cannot control the mind. Now, to control the senses, you have to do certain things and you don't have to do certain things, because if you don't do right way, the senses may get agitated, right? So the yoga process is to train our senses and the mind to do what is beneficial to connect to the Supreme. This is the real yoga. Okay. All the bodily exercise, gymnastic, so in yoga, you just read, there is eight steps, Astanga Yoga, right? So yama, niyam, asana, pratyahara, pranayam, pratyahara, dhyan, dharana, all that stages we discussed earlier. So the eight stages means to ultimately able to control the mind. This mind is very powerful. If the mind is in our control, it can help us to connect to the Supreme, to achieve the real purpose of this body. Okay, this body has a purpose. What is this for human form of body? Is to connect to the Supreme. Now, if this mind is not controlled, and the controlling process is yoga, then what will happen? You will not achieve the goal. You will die, and then again, new life, new machine, but we'll keep on going. The purpose is not served. So the mind, it is said, Krishna said, it is, if it is controlled, if you can control, it is your best friend. Why best friend? Because it will do what you want. And if it is uncontrolled, it is your enemy, worst enemy. Krishna saying, enemy. And worst enemy, not just enemy. Because it will not do what you want. It will do whatever controlled by its own way it will work. It's so crazy, right? And we had studied the definition of mind. Mind is like a monkey, drunk, bitten by the scorpion, and haunted by the ghost. That's the state of mind. So how you control that mind? Krishna is explaining Ashtanga Yoga here. And Prabhupada is emphasizing ultimately purpose of Ashtanga Yoga is to control the mind. But if you can control the mind directly by engaging your mind in the service of Krishna, then your mind is automatically controlled, right? Because ultimately these are the means. All these yoga practices are the means to control the mind. But if you can control the mind by engaging your mind in the service of Krishna, by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, then you don't have to do those difficult 8 stages. You can directly reach to the topmost, Samadhi. Because Samadhi means uninterrupted, concentrated, concentration of the mind in the super soul. That's called Samadhi, uninterrupted. So you don't have to have any interruption. You're just constantly focusing your mind and attaching your mind to the Supreme, Super Soul. And if you can directly engage your mind in the Krishna, chanting the words of Krishna, vibration of this sound, that's the best means to achieve the purpose of yoga. Okay. So that was the discussion today. Any questions, comments from today? Hare Krishna.
Actually, Prabhuji, all shlokas, I think they're all similar, no?
No, they are not similar. This is a process, so it looks similar. But if you go and review, then you'll see Krishna is explaining different. So he started, what a person is said to be in elevated in yoga. How? When you renounce the material desire, then then he says in text 5, then you deliver yourself with the help of mind, not degrade because it's the enemy. If it is not controlled and its friend, it's controlled. Then he says, one who has conquered the mind, mind the best friend, but who is not doing it, the greatest enemy.
Okay.
And then it goes on to say, what is the purpose of controlling the mind? Somebody can say, why should I control my mind? And it says, because you need to reach the super soul. And if you don't control your mind, you will not able to reach the super soul. You will get disturbed in happiness, distress, heat, cold, dishonor, honor of this world. And because all these things we feel, distress, happiness, heat, cold, honor, dishonor, because of the mind. But if you can control the mind, that don't focus on these temporary disturbances, let's focus on our goal, then you can reach the super soul. So the purpose of then he says, who is yogi? Who is called yogi? Person who is established in self-realization, who is satisfied by the acquiring knowledge and realization, and then how he sees everything as the same, whether it's a pebble, stone, or gold. There is no difference
Hmm.
because he sees the purpose of it. What is the purpose of this world? It's the same. Enjoy. So there is no difference, right? A person is considered still further advanced when he regards everyone same, whether you are a friend, well-wisher, affectionate, enemy, meditator, envious friend, everything is same. When you can see everything same, when you're not attached to this world, because these dualities, friend, enemy, meditator, neutral, benefactor, affectionate, well-wisher, is all because of our vision to this world, right? So then 10th he's explaining one should engage his mind, body and self in relation with Supreme and live in a secluded place. Why to live in secluded place? Because they want to reach to samadhi. Samadhi means uninterrupted concentration of the mind on the Supreme Soul. So then you need secluded place because otherwise people will disturb it. And then the results you will get, you should not think of desire and feeling of possessiveness. You should more think of I want to serve Krishna, right? Because otherwise you'll say, oh, I got just like Ravana did a lot of Ravana, a lot all these demons, they were big yogis. You know, they meditated for thousands of years. Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, but at the end, what did they do? They chased their own god. You know, Hiranyakashipu meditated on Brahma, Brahma gave him boon, and then he chased away Brahma itself. Ravana meditated on Shiva, Shiva gave him boon, and then he chased Shiva himself. And he said, okay, now you get out of Kailas, it's mine, give me Parvati now. There's so many stories. Why? Because these people doing meditation to achieve their own satisfaction. They were not achieving super soul. Okay, because their mind was not controlled. Otherwise, why they will do so much nonsense after becoming so big yogi? They should not be. Ravana should not be running behind omens or Sita or on someone else's wife. He was a big yogi. You know, he was a big meditators and Ashtanga yogi. He meditated thousands of years to please Lord Shiva. But then what did he do? What did he do? He kidnapped someone else's wife. And not only he raped so many humans, there's a whole history of Ravana. So why? Because the mind was not controlled, so it became enemy. And then at the end, he was not just killed himself; the whole dynasty was over. The Lanka was destroyed. So that's way too careful. But the whole purpose is control the mind. But if you can control the mind by some other way, the simpler way in the Kali Yuga is Hare Krishna Mahaman chanting, and that's why we do chanting. Okay. So that the purpose to learn all this and then decide. That's why Krishna is explaining everything. So that we don't go back to Vedas and all. Everything is there in Bhagavad Gita. You learn from here and then take the final message. Okay. All right. So let me see who's there on the call. So all of you I know do chanting already. So I'm not gonna do chanting today. If there are new people next time, then we can do chanting. It's already a little late. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. No? Let's end here then. Thank you so much for joining. And we are
You.
going good now. We are 10 sloka today we finished. So we'll try to. And now slokas will be a short one because Prabhupada already explained a lot in last 5 chapters. So he'll be giving more of glimpse of what it is. So we have to be careful a little bit to understand in context. So this is Dhyan Yoga, and then we'll go on in subsequent chapters. Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Let's do
Thank you,
prayers, and we'll
Prabhuji.
end here. Vancha kalptaruvasya cha kripa sindhivyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namah. जय श्री कृष्ण
Jai Krishna
चैतन्य प्रभु
Chaitanya Prabhu
नित्यानंद श्री
Nityananda
अद्वैत
Sri
गदाधर
Advaita
श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद
Gadadhar.
हरे
Hare
कृष्णा
Krishna,
कृष्णा
Hare
कृष्णा
Krishna,
कृष्णा
Krishna
हरे
Krishna,
हरे
Hare Hare, Hare
हरे
Ram,
राम
Hare
राम
Ram,
राम
Ram
हरे